there's good days and bad days because actors are all nuts, and I mean that in the best way.
Okay, let's do this. You're watching or listening to a new podcast, Say Again, with me, Amrita Tripathi. And today I'm so delighted to have with us former journalist, former film critic, and the chief operating officer of Dharma Cornerstone Agency, Rajeev Masand. I'm getting used to that new designation. Thank you
Yeah,
so
I
much.
was gonna say all of this. You have to say former, all of that, but constant friend.
Constant friend, I know, and it's such a delight to be in your orbit still. I think it's maybe going on 15 years now, right, since the early days.
Yeah. More than that, I think. I believe from the start of when we started working together, probably a little longer than that. Yeah.
Yeah, really dating myself constantly with these references, but I love it. So Rajiv, I want to ask you a little bit about many things, but to start with, when
So
you made this career transition, it was a big one, wasn't it?
yeah,
You decided to
it was.
hang up your boots as a film critic and a journalist. Tell us a little bit about
It
how
was.
that.
I'd done that. I'd been a journalist for almost 25 years when in 2020 I decided it was the COVID year, and I think obviously I was already a little bit tired, but I feel like that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I feel like uh, I was if I have to do one more interview over Zoom, or if I have to review one more film that I'm watching on an iPad, I'm going to slash my wrist. So I decided I don't think I want to do that much longer, uh, and I decided I don't want to do that anymore. I ended my contract with the network that I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had my own YouTube channel. I was creating. That was the other thing. I also began to realize that if you are creating content, you might as well be doing it for yourself. If you are, you know, sort of making a bank of material, it's probably best to own it. And as journalists, we're not, in a pre-YouTube and a pre sort of aggressive internet era. That was never something we were ever was ever on our radar either.
Hmm.
So when I gave up the gig at Network 18, I sort of focused on my YouTube channel for a bit. I realized I'm happy doing that, but the business side of it, because there is always a business side to it, is not something that I was naturally sort of, good at. But I did it. I enjoyed doing the roundtables, which I used to do. Now doing them for myself, owning them. But then this sort of offer came along, and and it was funny because I would never ever have if this job was advertised, I would never have sort of pitched myself for it because I didn't think I'd be in the artist management business. But the pitch that Karan Johar and Bunty Sajde, who are the two partners in the company that I work at, gave me at the time was that you review films for a living. You've reviewed films for a living for a long time. Now you review scripts because the big part of this job is helping actors choose what are the projects that they should work on, what are the films and shows that they should work on. So it's really reading scripts and helping them decide whether it's right for them. And that was a great pitch. And I was like, if they think I can do it, I should give it a shot. And I did. What they didn't tell me is that's a very small part of the job. A big part of the job is the management, is sort of helping them sort of figure their lives and their careers out. And it's not been too bad. There's good days and bad days because actors are all nuts, and I mean that in the best way. Uh, they're unpredictable, strange creatures.
Yeah.
But I genuinely mean that with affection. So once you sort of wrap your head around that, you get used to it.
And also, so tell me something. Does it help that you've had this kind of bird's eye view of the industry? Like you've been outside, you've been inside. It's actually different sides of the
Yeah.
same round.
I think it only helps to the extent that you know how to talk to actors, you understand their nature and their temperament and their personalities and their insecurities. That I think I really had a good idea of having interviewed them over the years and having worked with them so closely. But apart from that, and I like to say this, what I've learned about actors in the last 3.5 years is way more than I ever did in 25 years of being a journalist. Because now you really see them sort of unvarnished, and you really see them at their most vulnerable, and you see them for who they really are, which is you know beautiful and ugly and complex and all of those things. And it really just like the rest of us. But those are sides that you're not necessarily exposed to as a journalist.
Yeah.
So to some degree, yes. And I think the fact that I love movies and I understand what makes some films work and what doesn't. And I think just an understanding of script and of screenplay. I think, and just one's, a familiarity with actors. I think that to that extent, I think it helps. But a lot of it is stuff that you just pick up on the job.
I imagine that having a strong sense of empathy is important in your role here. Like you've
Oh
always been
yeah,
an empathetic leader. Tell us a little bit about how critical that is. I mean, I think not just in your industry, but more broadly, more widely. I feel like this is an age where we need more empathy in leadership
oh
than
yeah.
ever.
I think COVID did that, right? I think that sort of phase really taught us how vulnerable we can be, and sort of allowed us to be really vulnerable. I mean, I can speak for myself. I remember you know really going through a roller coaster of emotions that year for various reasons, and then the next year when I got sick, and when you're working with actors, you realize they're facing it all the time because their jobs and their careers are roller coaster.
Hmm.
It really is the stereotype, or the old adage that every Friday makes or breaks you. There's truth in that stereotype. You're really only as good as your last hit. Uh, so and the competition is intense and it's fierce, and the stakes are so high, but you can kind of appreciate and understand why they are so complex and why they are so insecure. And even the most talented ones, and even the ones that are most secure, uh, the it's also a profession where there's so much surround sound, right? There's so many people telling you how you should be, what you should do, what you should choose, what you shouldn't. There's just to be able to tune off that surround sound is cannot be easy. And therefore, I really do think that what you need to really bring is a lot of empathy and a lot of patience when you're dealing with actors, because some of them are divas and some of them are assholes, but most of them are really just complex because of the nature of the business that they're in. And I think if you appreciate that, and you're willing to put in a lot of patience, I think you can strike up a relationship where there is absolute trust, or the
Hmm.
closer get to that, because to work that closely with them, and I like to say that my job, if done right, I could play a small part in helping shape an actor's career, and that is so incredible if you're able to be a small part of that.
Yeah.
So uh, so and to sort of achieve that, there has to be complete trust. There has to be there has to be no filters. There has to be faith. There has to be all of those things. And I think that comes from really understanding and appreciating that it is a job like none other.
Hmm.
And there's just too many factors that come into play. It's just such a it's just such a closely watched profession. Everything from your clothes to the way that you speak, to the way that you act, to the way that you behave, what you do in your personal life, what you do on screen is constantly judged. And if you can put yourself in their place for a little bit, you understand why sometimes they're so complex. Which if you don't tend to understand, I can see why a lot of people, including myself, before I did this job, was quite dismissive of people that are badly behaved, or indecisive, or unprofessional. I'm not making excuses for them. I just feel like I have a little bit more of a wholesome idea of what makes them tick and why they are the way that they are. And that's why I think empathy is very, very crucial.
Yeah.
And I really do like to think that that is one of the characteristics that I bring. And I think that that's something that the ones that I work with sort of appreciate about me.
And
Maybe too patient. Sometimes,
oh really?
my kids will tell me, maybe you need to be a little bit firm now. Don't allow them don't allow them too many liberties.
I have to ask Rajiv at some point who are the divas and the a-holes, but I will not do that while we're recording.
Off camera.
Off camera. When you had that weekly column, it used to be so much fun. So, for those of you who remember, Rajiv used to have this fantastic column where he would give us these like tantalizing, sneak peeks into the industry, but not really name people. And
Right.
from time to time, I'd be like, I'm above all of this. I don't care about gossip. But every time I'd see you, I'd be like, listen, Rajiv, I need to know what's the deal.
Yeah. Well, that column got me into so much trouble, right? I mean, it then became something that just sort of snowballed into other things, and I mean, it was fun when it was on, and it was never meant to be. The column was always meant to be what the industry is talking about, because
Yeah.
at the time, of course, I was an outsider, so it
Yeah.
was. It was never anything that was new to people within the industry, because there
Yeah.
were stories and insights sourced from within. But of course, it was always exciting for people outside who were reading it. They did that. Oh, she said that. Oh, they
Yeah.
charged that.
Yeah.
So it was fun while it lasted, and then it kind of 2020 wasn't a great year, and it became a time when people just took pot shots at anyone and everyone for anything, and people needed scapegoats, and I think it sort of it kind of it ended when it should have ended.
I do want to make a point to note, because some of the work I've been doing in the mental health space, we've talked about the importance of how suicide is reported. The tragic death of Sushant Singh Rajput was terribly handled by the media, and you did
Yeah,
face your own. It was such a negative spiral. I saw from the outside a little bit of what you had to deal with on social media. I wanted to come to this a little bit later, but let me ask you one thing, because I've realized now, what actors are going through. You used to always be like, actors need a thick skin to be in the industry.
yeah,
It's now
yeah,
become everyone needs a thick skin if you're going to be on social. Do you have
yeah,
any advice for people who are like, because trolling is pretty intense, and I think people who haven't been
yeah,
trolled don't realize that, because even people have told
yeah.
me, like, just switch off your phone or don't go access, but you don't
Right.
realize how targeted attacks can actually
Can
destabilize
be.
you.
Yeah. I think if you allow social media, if you seek validation from that, if you get your sense of importance and self worth from the number of followers that you have, or the number of comments that you get, or the number of likes that you get, then it's inevitable that when that turns and when you're being told that you will not be able to say, "Oh, this is not real. This doesn't matter." It will take its toll, and it did on me. It was ugly, and it was not fun. But I think it's also true what people say that with time things change. It's just you're in that moment you feel like you're in the center of you're in the center of something where everyone's targeting you. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of distance from those incidents and from that time to really realize that it's not, because it's a bubble,
Yeah.
and I really don't think everyone's only talking about you only because we live in a world where really everyone's only thinking about themselves.
Yeah.
So for that moment, they may be thinking about you and talking about you and obsessed with pulling you down. Uh, but that wisdom only comes with time and distance. So in that moment, I can understand every single person that is being trolled. I have full empathy, full sympathy, and I know exactly what that feels like, having really been through that firsthand. uh, it's not, and what it's done, I will tell you, is that it's made me take social media a lot less seriously.
Hmm.
I will not allow it to control me. I will not allow it to give me an unreasonable sense of importance or happiness, so that when it's when the flip side is happening, it
Yeah.
doesn't allow me to it doesn't allow me to pull me down. I mean, I got off Twitter because I thought that was, which is now X, of course. I just found that was really a cesspool of negativity, and just the um that's what I remember when COVID happened. We thought it'll bring out the best of us, right? And it did. In many cases, it did. We saw people, really go out on the limb to help people that they didn't even know about. I know the number of. I got sick in 21, and I was hospitalized, and I know the number of people that I don't even know and never met that prayed for me and that
Yeah.
uh, sort of banded together. And that's just a small case. Even the previous year when people were trying to source oxygen, and we've seen the great side of it. But there's also a really ugly side to it where people are happy to sort of jump in and celebrate another person's misery or downfall.
Yeah.
And it really did expose the ugly side of humanity, of all of us, actually.
Yeah. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I mean, I feel like it's one of those things you realize that, and when I talk to younger people as well, what's shocking is, bullying was bad enough when we were young. It's actually
Yeah,
been weaponized in a way, right? That's what's
yeah,
scary about social. And of course, the disclaimer being, I worked at Twitter for several years, but it
correct.
was very much a problem that people were aware of, that, you have to figure out
Yeah.
ways to mitigate. So when you look at social now, you don't take it as seriously. You're saying, I do want to ask
I
you.
don't.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm not as invested anymore. I also feel, and I think that may be the switch from being someone that was a journalist and a critic to someone that's now, for what it's worth, I'm in a corporate job.
Hmm.
So I feel like I don't need to give my opinion. I don't need to share everything that I'm feeling. Uh, Certainly about when I mean what I'm feeling, what I mean not about myself, related to a film or related to what's happening in the world, or related to people. I don't think the world is dying to know what I have to say about it. So I'm off Twitter. I'm very happy about it. Instagram's fun because they're sharing pictures and stuff, but I'm not reading comments. I don't care how many likes there are. Uh, the only reason I haven't put Instagram on private is because some of us still make money off it. There'll be brand deals and stuff on and off, and I'm not saying no to that.
Yeah.
So that's really the only reason it's not a private account.
Yeah.
But for all practical purposes, I'm not interested in sort of sharing. I'm sharing my opinion. I mean, I'll put pictures that I want to put up, and I'll say things that I want to say,
Yeah.
which are related to myself. But I don't need to broadcast my opinions. I don't think it's important anymore.
And and when you said about the brand thing, I was just smiling because I'm like, I love it when journalists or former journalists start thinking like business
Of
people,
course.
because we have to remember that that's an important side of life which we ignored for so
Yes,
many
I
years.
mean, for years as a journalist and as a critic, you're not meant to, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, the way that business works is if you have X number of followers, and especially if I'm a sneaker freak, and often the kind of stuff that will come to me will be related to sort of sneakers and sports and imagine sports, but sneaker related, or the odd, even sometimes the odd film. Someone's made an ad film and they want to promote that or whatever. And so I'm sort of I'm not a journalist anymore. I'm not a critic anymore. It's not a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
I hate the word influencer, but I'm yeah. I mean, I've got X
You
number
have been in.
of people that are listening to what I have to say.
Yeah, well, you can't hate the word because you've been in ads. So now we have to be like, listen, I mean, we'll find a better word for you, but you're definitely a public figure and like
Yeah,
as far
the
as
influence that
it's
word is
really,
not
yeah.
fun because we've laughed at them all our lives, right? We're like, what do you do exactly?
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. So tell me a little bit about Rajiv, what you've kept alive from your previous avatar, because I think you still do the roundtables, right? The director roundtables and actor roundtables.
I do the roundtables. Netflix hired me to do the roundtables 3 years in a row, and I was happy to do that. It's a little restrictive because I did it with it's a roundtable of some of the best actors, some of the best directors that have made films for Netflix. So it's certainly restricted, uh, but it's a fun gig, and
Yeah.
it's something that I enjoy doing. And I feel like actors are happy to talk to me because I feel like they think it'll be a smart, sensible, fun conversation.
Yes,
So
and it comes across. Yeah.
that's kind of the only thing that I've done. But I feel like I don't even know if I want to do that anymore because I feel like there are enough roundtables that are happening, and enough really good ones. Again, I'm not sure. If the paycheck isn't great, it's not worth doing. There's other people that are doing it
Anyone
as
listening,
good.
add a few more zeros to the end of that check, and then you might
Maybe,
get.
maybe.
But that's so interesting because at one point there was no one else doing that. So it's quite interesting that we've seen this, come full circle in a way.
Yeah, it was a format that I kind of enjoyed, borrowed from the West.
Yeah.
The LA Times and Hollywood Reporter and all these
Yeah.
guys used to do it, borrowed from there. And we sort of started that at the channel that we worked for, CNN,
Yeah.
IBN at the time,
Yeah.
and it was something that was a nice sort of distinguisher, I feel. But there's enough people doing it now, and I did it for 12 years, 12, 13 years.
I saw one of your interviews where it was so interesting because you were like, if I had kept doing, I would have just been doing more of the same, and you wanted a
That's
change.
it.
So
That's it.
I think that's
I really didn't feel like there was anything dramatically more that I could do. One of the things that I loved doing was interviewing a lot of Hollywood filmmakers and actors. I did so much of that. I traveled so much and did so much of that. I interviewed everyone that I wanted to almost. I covered the festivals, I covered the Oscars, covered the Globes. I feel like I could have kept doing it for longer, but you get to an age where you just either you're happy to do to just keep doing the same thing because you're lazy. But I like to think that I'm not, and I needed a fresh challenge.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I do want to ask you then, what does that mean, when you have a mid career transition? Because I remember for me, it was a tough year. Like, I didn't even
Of
acknowledge
course,
that, your goalposts have changed. The way you judge yourself
correct.
changes. It's not a byline or how you're, looking or doing a show or
Yeah,
doing an interview. All of a sudden, the corporate world is very, very different. And what's
it
confusing is
is.
you get mixed messages, right? Because no one's really sitting there and saying, like, let me explain to you how I'm going to mentor you through this. How difficult has it been for you? What are some things that changed? How do you judge yourself?
I got really lucky that that's something with time that I've realized. If you get to work with people that are good people that have got your back, that is really the most and the best that you can hope for. You learn the job. There couldn't be a job more far removed that I do now from what I used to do. It really it falls apart. Um, but I had a great bunch of people that mentored me, and really more than mentored me, sort of empowered me to learn on the job, to fail on the job, to reinvent on the job. And I feel like I haven't done too badly for someone that's only been doing this 3.5 years. But yes, it's completely different. It's you, but you have to be that person, and that's the question that you ask yourself, right? I was 44 when I did that, and you're like, can I do it at 44? Can I reinvent? Can I play the young man's game? Am I willing to put in the work that a 20-something-year-old will put? Which I learned actually. We put in way more. The 40-year-old put way more work than the 20. That's not the problem.
Yeah.
It's about, will you adapt to technology and adapt to to changing sort of ways of working, and all of those things.
Yeah.
But I'm also someone that doesn't like to fail. I'm someone who has a lot of pride.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I have put myself out there, I'm going to do what it takes before I throw in the towel, and I rarely do. So there's good days and bad days in this job. It's a tough time for the business. It's no secret that the film business, the entertainment business, has been hit quite badly in terms of the budgets and how films are performing theatrically. So that obviously has a ripple effect on the kind of work that is available for actors, what is the kind of remuneration they can charge, and that directly affects sort of what you do for them.
Yeah.
And in those times, you have to sort of, and I do really think that it's times like that that my sort of experience, perhaps, and my, the gray hair comes in. I tell actors all the time, I said, in an area, at a time when nothing's a sure thing anymore,
Yeah.
the only thing perhaps that you can fall back on is good material. Chase good material, because there's more chance of that rewarding you than doing something for the wrong reasons. Oh, because this is a great actor that I'm going to be opposite, or this big director. The script doesn't really work for this big director. I'd say choose the material, chase the material, and more than likely, and often that doesn't always guarantee sort of success. But I think it's more likely, and it's a good sort of, it's a good compass to sort of go by. I feel.
No, that makes sense. And do you find that they're receptive to that? And I suppose I'll dovetail that question with one on what's one thing about Bollywood you think many people don't know? I mean, is it as cutthroat as it sounds? Is it more organized now than before, but still a bit of a chaos machine? What's one thing we don't know?
The funny thing is all of that is true. It's not one thing. It is a lot more organized than it was, and yet you see that so much of the business works just on relationships. Uh, it is very, very cutthroat because the competition is intense, and yet most people are just really trying to look out for themselves and get ahead of themselves, get ahead in their own lives and careers. So all of these things are true. That I think is the sort of beauty and the complexity of this business. But I think that most people are really trying to just, uh, you know, make a living, survive, get ahead, uh, excel. And I think I think it's the narcissism and it's the self-obsession that is that is truer than people sort of conspiring against others.
I love narcissism. There's
Yeah,
so
of
many things
course.
to ask you about this also off camera. But okay, I have a few more questions for you, Rajiv. One is,
Oh,
if you had a message for your younger self, I don't know, because, you had, it wasn't a linear career at all by any stretch, because you did go from print to,
yeah,
broadcast. You've been part of
yeah.
that sort of TV revolution for us as well. And then now
Uh-huh.
transitioning again. What would your message be to a younger Rajiv?
Uh, you know, I started working when I was 16, Amrita. I joined the Times Group when I was 16, and I say this to younger people as well. I think there's an age to work and there's a time to work. I think there is an age and a time to be a teenager and to be a 20-year-old and to do all of those things. Uh, I would probably say there's no rush, because you will burn out and you will get exhausted, and you will sort of feel like you're peaking, and all of those things. So I would really say there's no rush. You're really only competing with yourself. Uh, just have fun while you're at it. Just try to have a good time. It's not rocket science. The stakes are. It's not. We're not. finding a cure for cancer, all of those cliches.
Oh, that's so. You were pretty honest and driven from a young age. You feel you burn out early as
I
well.
think so. I was very excited about, I was working while I was still in college. I barely attended college. I was lucky that my college was happy to have sort of, a kid who was writing in the papers every day. So they let me sort of, they didn't hold me back because despite zero attendance and stuff. So I was really lucky.
Yeah,
But I wish I had, I wish I had that sort of those years and done, gone through those rites of passage that most kids my age did at that time.
yeah,
And I have to say here, nobody forced me. It was just, to be a 16-year-old and see your paper and see your name in the Times of India every alternate day is pretty cool
yeah,
and pretty exciting for a, for a 16-year-old who's ambitious and who wants to be a journalist and who looks up to great journalists. So it was purely me wanting to do all of those things, and I don't regret any of it. But I should have maybe spent some time just having fun.
Do you think now that you figured out this sort of balance for yourself a bit better at this stage?
I think it's very important to find a balance. It's so funny that one's discovered that when one's joined a profession where there is no time for yourself. Yeah. So I still do try to find some time, and I insist on having a life. I insist on traveling. I insist on spending time with people that, family and friends and all of those things. But this job is way more intense,
It's more.
because really here, your job is in service to other people's lives and careers. Uh, and when I say other people, we're talking about people that are very driven and very ambitious and wanting to succeed at all costs and wanting to slave drive you into doing what you have to do to help them get ahead. So it can be quite intense, but I think it's really important to find that balance,
Yeah.
because the same is true of any job. You will burn out, you will be exhausted, there will be fatigue, and at some point you'll say, "Is it really worth it?"
Yeah, I can imagine. And also from my limited exposure to your industry, I realized like there is no concept of like a Sunday or like what it's this is not an appropriate time to WhatsApp someone for help or advice or
There is no day, no time that is inappropriate. And again, I work with actors who expect that you're around all the time. So there is and I don't think it's only true of of the job that I do. I think within this profession,
yeah.
it really is one of those things where, this is what I was saying. Amrita, so much of it is, while some of it has become professional and corporatized, a lot of it is just relationship based, old fashioned
Yeah.
relationship based. So it's just about being able to. And of course, I can call you up at 11:30 because yes, I'm my agent, but you're also my buddy, and you know that I need you at this time. So it's 11:30 would be okay.
Yeah.
11:30 is not even the problem. It's when it's post midnight and post 1 a.m. and 2 a.m.
Yeah.
But it's when you sign up for it. When you sign up for it, it's all par for the course.
And so what is like something, we've spoken a bit about the pros and cons of many things. What are some of the best compliments you've gotten over your career?
Do you mean in the new job? Do you mean in
Yeah,
the
either new job, old job. Old job that we used
in
to
the
always
old job?
walk. We used to walk up to you and be like, "Oh my god, we love this, we love that. I loved your promo. You know that the
Yeah,
one where you everything."
yeah. I think what I like to remember is that, I feel like as an interviewer, what I learned pretty early on, and I tell young journalists, you can ask any question. You should ask every question that you want to ask. It's about how you ask it. I don't think there's anything that's a no go. I think it's about how you ask it. There has to be respect and there has to be sensitivity because you're talking to another human being.
Hmm.
And unlike politicians, actors are not answerable, are not accountable and answerable for their life choices.
Yeah.
Career choices maybe, but for their life choices and their behavior in their life. So I feel like if you are going to go there, then approach it with some sensitivity and I realized that I asked the toughest questions to sensitive people, but I asked in a way that didn't seem like I was trying to pull them down, but I was trying to do it because I wanted an answer.
Hmm.
And I think people appreciated that, and I think that that's something that comes back to me very often. That you were never rude or nasty to people, even while asking questions that were very uncomfortable questions.
Hmm.
And I think the same is true of reviews. People say that. I mean, a lot of people sort of will remember and say, "Gosh, you said you never minced your words." And I think that's a different one. I think in reviews, I think it's also a performance, right? It was not reviewing on in print; it was reviewing on television. So that's a performance in itself.
Yeah.
That's an art in itself. You are putting up a show. So try to be as funny as you can and try to say, and the one jab will always travel wider. People remember the one mean thing you said about a film.
Much
No
more.
one remembers the good stuff.
Yeah.
But what I keep, when people meet me and they remember the reviews, what they talk about is, oh gosh, used to really say such cruel things. And I think they mean it in a good way, also because so much of it is now so PR driven,
Yeah.
that I think people appreciate just all the critics. I mean, it's not just me. All the critics that have a reputation for speaking their mind and saying it as it is.
And I've heard that that can be very tough. Yeah, including in this industry, but globally, I suppose as well, right? It's a tough line to.
It's very tough. I mean, I was very very lucky that I worked with editors that really trusted me and gave me the room and the respect and the space to, because they try. It has to come from trust, right? It
Yeah.
has to come from trust. That this is a person that cares deeply about films, that cares about commentary and criticism, and will be not even measured, but will say what he feels in a way that is not at least disrespectful.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, going from that job to this job. So in the early days, it was bumping into people that whose films I hadn't said particularly nice things about, and going to them now, in the capacity of an agent who's looking for work for their actors, wasn't very easy.
Oh no. But you had to balance that as well. Like it's a new muscle.
Yeah, you just take it on the chin, because there was one particular producer, and he shall not be named, who was like, "Oh, I remember what you said about my film, and now you've come asking for work for your actor." And I was like, "But that's my job now." So,
But
yeah.
yeah, so I think that there is a lot of like reinventing that has to happen, especially when you
Oh,
take on a new role. What are some of
oh
the
yeah.
most memorable anecdotes you have? I mean, this is going to be a tough one because I don't know how many hundreds of
Oh,
thousands of interviews you've done in your career, but who were some of your favorite people to interview globally? I mean, Hollywood,
yeah.
Bollywood, across the board.
There's no question that Shah Rukh Khan is the most exciting person to interview, uh, because he really commits to an interview. An interview. The best interviews are the ones where the interviewer comes fully prepared and is invested, but also where the person that's being interviewed is investing as much in terms of his not just his time, but also his interest and his honesty, and wanting to be upfront and wanting to tell you what you want to know. And often, actors especially are doing so many interviews in a day. It's become such machinery that they're not really giving it their all, so you don't get the best interviews, which is why you appreciate the ones that even when they're doing 50 interviews a day, they're making every interview special. And Shah Rukh Khan is the ideal example of that.
Yeah.
Even a 5 minute interview with him, for those 5 minutes, you feel like you're the most important person in the world. You've got his attention. He's committing to that conversation. And some of the best conversations are with him. But this is the boring answer, because literally any film journalist you ask will tell you this.
Will you
Uh,
please tell Shah Rukh Khan I love him? This is what I need you to do. This is the whole point of this
the
podcast.
funny thing is, in this job, I don't see him as often, but when I do, I will.
Please do. So, I only had the
Yeah,
opportunity. I think we did a phone interview once when I was at CNN IBN back in the day.
lucky.
And it was really funny
Uh-huh.
because he had been put on some Time magazine, top 100, some very cool accolade he had. So
Yes,
they connected him. And I think
yes.
they couldn't reach you. So they were like, okay, anchor, like we're going to patch you in. I still remember the studio director
Yeah.
saying, you are so lucky we don't have the camera on you right now. I went red because he said something, 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 darling. And I swear, I'm
Yeah.
like, can I keep that recorded forever? And the studio director was like, otherwise, so professional, but look at your face right now. And I'm like, it's Shah Rukh Khan.
Well,
Come on.
he has that effect on anyone, man, woman, creature.
Yeah, I think he's one of the true, like, you're right. I feel like everyone loves him and it shows. So Shah Rukh is one of your favorite. What about Hollywood or any of the other global?
I've written a column about this. I will say the other person, and it's funny because exactly like Shah Rukh, Tom Cruise. This sounds like I'm dropping names,
This is
but
what we want
but
here.
I've been, and I've realized now why they're superstars for more than 30 years. Because when they're in the room, there's of course the magnetism and the charismatic quality, but when they're sitting across from you, you are the most important person in their orbit and in their lives, and
Hmm.
that's pretty cool to be to be sitting there, across from an actor that you've grown up on, whose films you've watched all your life, and he's asking you about your tattoos, and I'm like, if the tattoos were worth it now. And I told Shah Rukh, I wrote a column on it, and I feel like they're very similar in that, but
Oh,
they know how to make the other person feel important. They know how to invest in a conversation, and even if they don't want to answer questions, it's never by putting you down in the way that some people will.
yeah,
It really is. They'll find a way. I mean, they're also the guys who have the gift of the gab,
yeah.
so they'll find a way around it, which doesn't even look like they're not answering it, but they'll be able to say exactly and only as much as they want
As
to
much
say.
as and I think you've interviewed both of them more than once, because I remember Tom Cruise. You also had done
I've
something in
interviewed
Japan.
both of them. You know, with Tom Cruise, those interviews are shorter interviews. So I've interviewed him like three times for 5 minutes each.
Yeah,
In India, one of course has the opportunity to interview our actors for longer. So of course, Shahrukh over the years, but longer interviews,
yeah.
20 minutes. You really can get into the depth of a conversation here because you have more access. Over there, the shorter conversations, and that's what I mean. Even in a 5 minute interview, if someone is able to make it memorable and someone's able to commit to it and give you something as an interviewer that you feel like you got something in even a 5 minute junket interview, then that's a good interview subject.
That is incredible. And the other thing I
Yeah.
want to ask you, and I'm just looking at how the time is whizzing by. So we will be winding down with a few questions for you, but have to do this
Okay.
again in person sometime.
Always.
Season two, hopefully.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
what I love to know in terms of like pop culture, like you don't have to do movies because if that's too overdone, but what are some of the
No,
things you
sure.
enjoy reading, listening to, watching? What's going on behind the scenes with you?
The funny thing is, I think I'm just a movie guy. So what I read is non-fiction film stuff. What I listen to are film-related podcasts. But one of my favorite podcasts recently, which is not film-related, is the Zarna Garg family podcast. She's this amazing, incredible Indian uh, living in America, Indian American stand-up. She's incredible, Zarna Garg.
Yes,
And she's here in India, and she performed in India, and I went
you
and
met her, right?
sort
I
of
saw something.
I went and met her and I was like, I'm this huge fan. And she does this family podcast where her three kids and her husband all sort of weigh in on cultural differences between living in India, living in the West, what it's like living with your parents, I mean, all of those things. And she's incredible, and that podcast was great. But more often than not, I'm reading film stuff. I'm reading non-fiction film stuff. A lot of biographies. I really enjoy biographies of filmmakers, studio heads. I read a few books on agents and agencies because that's the job I do now. The Michael Ovitz book, which is where is Michael Ovitz? Um, the CAA, the big oral history of CAA. So I try to read a lot of non-fiction film stuff. What I'm watching, the last thing that I loved, like everyone else, was Baby Reindeer. I'm watching Mirzapur season 3 right now. I'm pretty much watching anything that everyone's talking about and that is good. But there's one eye that's also trained to looking for new talent or looking for talent that one part of it is about, hey, is this person really exciting? That do we think this person has a lot of potential that we could maybe represent? So now one's watching for that as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. Of course, that's a new
Yeah,
that's the thing you have to focus
it's
on
new.
now, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, and I have a final question for you, and this is a shout out to Sai, my friend and former colleague, who said it might be nice to ask people what are they grateful for. So, a couple of things you're grateful for at this
Oh
point.
wow. That is so lovely. That is such a lovely question. That's such a beautiful way to end. I'm genuinely really grateful uh, to be healthy. I realized that we took that not so seriously. I had a very terrible health scare in 21. Grateful to be alive, grateful to be healthy, but really grateful to be able to do something in the area that I love, which is around films. Uh, just grateful to have my parents around me, grateful to have family. And very often grateful to be able to have a voice that people want to listen to because for so long I was, people cared about what my opinion on films were. And even now, be on Instagram and to put up a picture or to say something about a show or a film and that I now can have people sort of say, hey, we'll find this and we'll give it out. I think one has to be grateful for all of those things.
Thank you so much. That is lovely. I think that was something lovely to think
So,
about, and we appreciate you. I appreciate you so much for taking up the
well,
time
thank you.
for what you
I'm
do.
such a big fan of it. This is so good for. I mean, I've loved watching you on television. I watched you so closely, but to be on the other side is such an honor and such a privilege. Thank you for having me, Amrita. Thank you so much. I
Thank
really
you.
mean it.
I'm so happy to hear that, because there's always a little bit of nerves with colleagues who are professionals. You're like, oh wait,
Of course.
you don't want to.
No, the nerves were at my end. The nerves were at my end. I was like, she interviews amazing people. I better not come off sounding like an idiot.
No, you do not at all. This is wonderful, which means we
Okay,
do have to
thank
do
you.
a part two in your favorite city, which
Will do
I will have to
in
come back
person.
to. Thank you
Will
so
do.
much.
Will do.
Talk to you
Thank you.
soon. Bye.
Thanks so much. See you soon. Bye.